Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are here with Austin from Ohio, and today is Monday, May 24th, 2021. Hopefully, you are actually seeing this video because I went to record twice and it said there was a recording problem. It said something about I could be running an app or two that are recording phone calls or something like that. Very weird, but it wasn't letting me record, but it seems to be doing all right now. So, I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. First, I want to thank everybody for watching and then responding positively to the video I put out last night. I first saw over on David Yates' channel, and the doctor, Vernon Coleman, is very, very concerned about the state of affairs in his life right now. And a lot of people said that he could be controlled opposition. Right now, I don't have any reason to believe that. I don't remember if he was on the video that 7 Grains of Salt did. I'm gonna have to look into that further. But when you're playing with something like that, even if it's not a legitimate thing and somebody believes legitimately that their life is in danger, you always get the word out about that, because you don't want something to happen and then look back and be like, oh man, I thought this guy was this, and now something happened to him, and I could have got out there and tried to prevent it, and this and that, and yeah. So, I'm not exactly sure what to believe, but, I mean, I just started watching him a few months ago when Carol was putting up videos about him over at Never Lose Truth and on Odyssey and whatnot, and the information that he's putting out is pretty on point, and he backs everything up with documentation, so that's something that I can respect. Again, I'm not 100% on that, so you can't really, it can go either way, but like I said, when dealing with something like that, you always want to get the word out regardless. I don't have much else to say, so we can just jump right into it. This is from 5 hours ago, CBS News. Why background checks are critically necessary to curb gun violence. Check this out. A record number of gun sales, along with the disruption to normal life by the situation, have contributed to a 25% surge in homicides and non-suicide related shootings in 2020, according to a gun control advocacy group. Okay, according to a gun control advocacy group. Not according to any database, not according to archives, not according to the NICS system, not according to any of that. No, this is according to a gun control advocacy group. So this is according to people who are involved and want to take away people's firearms. Yeah, real legitimate. CBS shouldn't even have ran something like this. Is this your source? A gun control advocacy group? That's your source, CBS. I'm talking to you. Big mega conglomerate corporation. Won't you respond back to little old me over here? A gun control advocacy group. As soon as I read that, I was like, oh my lord, this is ridiculous. Anyway, quote, what we know is the year will be remembered for 2 conflicting, compounding public health crises, C-19 and gun violence, said Nick Suplina, the managing director for law and policy of Everytown for Gun Safety. Oh, so Michael Bloomberg, Everytown for Gun Safety. Okay. I could have sworn in 2020 we didn't hear a peep about any, quote, mass shootings or, quote, any types of shootings, because the whole year was just about, well, the situation. And I remember people talking about that, saying, oh, it's just like all the shootings stopped and all the terrorist acts stopped and all this stuff because, the situation was so bad. Now, all of a sudden, according to this gun control advocacy group, there was a 25% surge in homicides. I would like to see that. A report released earlier this month from the group found there were nearly 4,000 more firearm deaths and more than 9,000 firearm-related injuries in 2020 than 2019. Again, I don't believe that. I don't believe that whatsoever because of, well, it's according to this gun control advocacy group. If I am in a, let's see here, if I'm in a food control advocacy group and I'm trying to get people to stop eating gross, disgusting, greasy food to get people to be healthier, I'm probably gonna be a little biased and come out and say, oh, we've seen a 25% surge in hamburger-related deaths in 2020. What they're banking on is for people to just believe this and say, well, this group said it, this gun control advocacy group, so must be true, right? Must be true. Speaking to CBSN on Monday, Suplina said the situation exacerbated so many of the cases of gun violence. Stress levels were high. Opportunities for employment were lower, he said. Okay. I know a lot of people that were stressed. I know a lot of people that own guns. I don't know anybody that was stressed enough to commit an act of violence against somebody with a firearm. Not saying that they didn't happen, but I don't believe there was a 25% surge. I would like them to show me, besides this source, I would like them to show me exactly where. Because they can't. Because they would have put it up. And they wouldn't be going based off of a gun control advocacy group. But what do I know? The situation's economic impact on gun violence was particularly felt in black communities because, according to Everytown's findings, they are overrepresented in jobs that cannot be done remotely, jobs that needed to be cut as the situation worsened. Okay, according to Everytown's findings, let's see the findings. Let's see it. Let's see these findings. I would love to see it. Quote, this kind of economic distress has a significant bearing on all forms of gun violence, as research shows that neighborhoods with high unemployment or high poverty rates have higher rates of gun homicide, the group states. Again, the group states, not according to the databases, according to FBI, according to Homeland Security. Even that would be more legit than some group, and we know that they lie. This is not according to any real numbers of anything at all. This is not according to any of archives, nothing like that. This is according to some group. Whatever. And of course they have to bring in the race thing, right? Right? Suplina also added that spikes in gun violence are common over the summer months when the academic year is over, which last year was also severely affected by C-19. Quote, school was out months early this year, summer youth employment was down, so we saw a number of the factors that typically contribute to increases in gun violence over a much longer period of time. He also added that 2020 saw record increases in gun sales. Okay, that's true. That was according to, FBI and people like that. And we know that they lie. But there was a record number of people buying firearms, but that was for personal defense. These people weren't buying firearms to go out and commit any heinous acts. No, that was for personal defense. Everybody that went and bought a gun bought it because a lot was and still is happening. And they want to protect their families because they're unsure of what the future holds. An estimated 22 million guns were purchased in 2020, a 64% increase over the previous year, according to Everytown's report. Quote, we know that some of those sales are stretching our background check system thin. Many of them are not undergoing a background check at all, Suplina said. Lie. That is a flat-out, blatant lie. Lie, 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 lie. You know how I know that? Excuse me. Because I've bought firearms. And guess what? You still have to do a background check. When they say that there's these gun show loopholes and stuff like that, sometimes when you go to gun shows, okay, yeah, you might not have to go through a background check, but that is very seldom. Very, very seldom. I've known people who won guns at a gun show. My stepdad did, actually, and guess what? He had to go through a background check. Those guns are also crossing state lines. After studying 5 years of data trends involving guns used in crimes, one troubling conclusion of the group's research released Monday, nearly 1/3 of trace guns were brought across state lines before being used in a crime. Correlation doesn't equal causation. Just because someone brings a firearm over state lines, which is in most cases not illegal, doesn't mean they're going to do anything like that. 3/4 of the firearms used in a crime that came from other states were from states that do not require background checks on all gun sales. With more guns being purchased and trafficked than ever, Subpoena is calling for a nationwide mandate on background checks so that gun traffickers and criminals don't go shopping across state lines. Yeah, it's always so the criminals and gun traffickers don't shop across state lines. Well, here's something for you. Actual criminals, real people who go and commit crimes, evil people, we'll say, because you can be a criminal just by, they pass a law and they can make a criminal out of millions of people. Like with the whole bump stock thing, they literally created, under the Trump administration, literally created millions of criminals out of good people. They do it all the time. But these gun traffickers and criminals, they buy from the street. So they're still going to go to their people no matter what. Why do you think you can't buy a gun in Chicago at all? But there's a lot of guns and a lot of gun violence in Chicago, a city that is not allowed to have any. Quote, we know that action needs to happen at the federal level. I think Democrats and Republicans in the Senate understand that too, Subpoena said. We believe that there are negotiations occurring in Congress that are occurring in good faith. Not only is it popular, but it's critically necessary. Oh. Well, gee, I would like to see this report this gun control advocacy group put out. I really would like to see it. And I would like to see where they got their information, because they're lying on most things. Those are some nice firearms right there. Look at that. Look at that. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on. I found this one a little interesting. And this one, it comes from CNBC. War footing needed to correct economists' miscalculations on climate change, says professor. Published Sunday, May 23rd, 2021. Economic forecasts predicting the potential impact of climate change grossly underestimate the reality and have delayed global recovery efforts by decades, a leading professor has said. Mainstream economists deliberately and completely ignored scientific data and instead made up their own numbers, Steve Keen, a fellow at UCL, told CNBC. Now, a war-level footing is required to have any hope of repairing the damage. Okay, so what they're basically saying is exactly what it says. I don't even have to try to explain it to anybody. They have to be on a war-level footing, as in they need to take this militarily. There's no other way to put that. And this should scare the living hell out of every single person in the world. Not just here in the United States. Economic forecasts predicting the potential impact of climate change have grossly underestimated the reality. We already read that part up there. And we already read that part up there. Why would they put that there twice? Now, a war-level footing is required to have any hope of repairing the damage. Ooh. Quote, fundamentally, the economists have totally misrepresented the science and ignored it where it contradicts their bias that climate change is not a big deal because, in their opinion, capitalism can handle anything, Keen told Street Signs Asia. When has anybody ever said anything like that? These people lie for a living as a matter of policy. They literally lie as a matter of policy. When you go into media, they teach you how to lie. That's the only way that they go about any of it. We are toying with forces far in excess of ones we can actually address. All right? King said the repercussions of climate change were foretold in the 1972 publication, The Limits to Growth, a divisive report on the destructive consequences of global expansion. But economists then and since failed to heed its warnings, preferring instead to rely on market mechanisms. Quote, if their warnings had been taken seriously, we'd done as they'd suggested. Changing our trajectory from 1975 on, we could have done it gradually, using things like carbon tax and so on, he said. Because economists have delayed it by another half century, we are, as a species, putting 3 to 4 times the pressure on the biosphere. Here's something. They're so concerned about this climate change stuff, right? And they're so concerned about it destroying all of our lives. Why do the only solutions that they have are further government control over the people? That doesn't sound like much of a actual solution to a would-be problem if it were an actual thing. It always seems to be like that, though, doesn't it? It always seems to be more government control over the population in the form, in this instance, a carbon tax. All right. As a result, he said, quote, the only way we can reverse this effectively, a war-level footing of mobilization to reverse the amount of carbon we put into the atmosphere to drastically reduce our consumption. As in, they're going to need to go to war with us to force us to give up pretty much everything that we've ever had to live and done in the last however long we've been alive. So they're going to have to hurry up and forward this Agenda 21, Green New Deal, Sustainable Development, which all translate into New World Order. You know, the one that doesn't exist. I always say that. I feel like a broken record. Oh, you guys can probably tell I'm fired up today. I am fired up today, boys. Yes, I am. Referring specifically to a report produced by economists at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which was instrumental in outlining global climate targets, including those presented to the Paris Agreement, COP21. Keene said even their most severe estimates were a trivial underestimate of the damage we expect. That's because they completely and deliberately ignore the possibility of tipping points, a point at which climate change can cause irreversible shifts in the environment. Lie. Lie. How long they've been saying this? Wasn't it at first? Oh, everybody's going to die by the year 2000. Never happened. Then it was, oh, everyone's going to die by the year 2010. Never happened. Now it's, oh my, we need to hurry up and build this world government by 2030. Or we're all going to die. No. Quote, I think we should throw the economists completely out of this discussion. Sit the politicians down with the scientists and say these are the potential outcomes of that much of a change to the biosphere. We are toying with forces far in excess of ones we can actually address. You notice how they're using logical fallacies? They're just throwing out a bunch of big words and saying, oh, scientists and politicians need to sit down and we're dealing with these forces that are far in excess of ones we can actually address. Like, can you go into more detail? Can we actually sit down and look at this, quote, science that you guys always say and throw in our face and call people science deniers? Well, I would like to see the science at least, and not just listen to some asshole that wrote a CNBC article or some professor from some college. I know people working at McDonald's that got those same degrees. You ain't impressing anybody. I want to see the actual reports, the actual paperwork, the actual experiments, hypothesis. I want to see all of it. But guess what? We never get to see any of that. You know why? Because it ain't there. Or else they would be like, oh, look at all this. This is a serious problem. No. They just tell you, experts said. Who are the experts? Then they give you some guy at some, oh, so-and-so, Bob Flagg at Cornell University said that, climate change is really bad and we have to do something about it. And he's an expert and we should listen to him. And the sheep go, well, experts said, let's give up everything we've ever known and loved. Let's give up all of our freedom because experts said and they know best. But what they don't know is that Bob Taft at Cornell University is a paleontologist. Literally. I've seen that before. Where they came out on NBC, actually, a while ago. I'm going to have to pull it up for my next video for you guys. And they were talking about, the situation. And they had this expert on. And he was talking about all this stuff. He was talking about, the impacts on our daily lives and how it affects our bodies and whatnot. And then it just said he was a doctor and he was an expert. Well, so I went ahead, what most people don't do, and I looked up this expert. And guess what? He was a paleontologist. A paleontologist. Do you believe that? Well, you should. If you don't, I'll bring it up in my next video if I remember. I'm gonna have to find that. Article. It was from like last August, I think, or something like that. It was last summer sometime when I seen it on the 5-channel package that we got in the living room. It was way before I was making videos, but I couldn't believe it. I was like, they're seriously putting this guy out there, a paleontologist, the guy that digs up bones and tries to put them together and just pretty much makes shit up. Sorry for my French today, but I'm in one of them moods, so we're going to have some fun. Keen's comments come as world leaders wrapped up their final day of meetings at the Arctic Council, an intergovernmental forum covering wide-ranging geopolitical issues from climate to trade. I'm going to have to look into that Arctic Council. Weird. Well, that's the end of that one. But yeah, they're saying that they need to be on a war footing. So they're really going to have to, start going to war against us. That's the way that I took it. But, let's move on. All right, here we are over at the National Catholic Register. And I found this one interesting for obvious reasons, because we know the different layers and different facets of this entire agenda. And this one is, just had to make sure I was still recording. Great Reset Plan parallels some of Pope's initiatives, but there is a crucial difference. I would say that it parallels a lot of the Pope's initiatives because, well, they're all working toward the same goal. Like the plan's promoters, the Holy Father. That's what they call this guy, the Holy Father. Oh, man. Also believes the global economy needs to be reshaped coming out of this situation. But unlike them, his vision is anchored in God's grace. What a mockery. What a total mockery. This guy is a Luciferian. This guy is the absolute worst. False prophet. The false prophet. Since it first came to public attention, June 2020, much discussion has surrounded the Great Reset, a global vision pushed by the World Economic Forum and supported by various world leaders to rebuild a society after situation based on greater solidarity and more sustainable economy. Prominent backers include President Joe Biden, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, Britain's Prince Charles. Each see it as a blueprint for resetting capitalism, a chance to build back better after the global situation. and to set the world on a more environmentally friendly and sustainable path for which there is no alternative. Yes, there is no alternative to this new world order. You must accept this global tyrannical government. We have been working at this for a long time. Anyway, many others have criticized the Great Reset's ambitions, including Brazil's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ernesto Araújo, who outright rejected it, saying that totalitarian social control is not the remedy for any crisis. I would have to agree with Mr. Ernesto Araújo, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Brazil. I would have to agree with this guy. And progressive author Naomi Klein, who is concerned that it creates an insidious and false impression that global elites are serious about tackling the issues in the global reset raises. In the church, Cardinal Raymond Burke called it a manipulative attack on freedom and the family. That's exactly what it is. But this guy, the cardinal, obviously he's part of the system, and this just gets people saying that, oh, you don't think it's an attack on freedom because of these cardinals, and they're the same people that rape kids, so you believe something that somebody who rapes kids believes, and that's why we got to go against that, because, again, it's multifaceted, it's meant to confuse you, it's meant to destroy you. More generally, critics see it as flawed and dangerous agenda that paves the way for an autocratic global future more closely resembling the communist capitalist system of increasingly dominant China. That's exactly what it is. That is exactly what it is. The Great Reset is the brainchild of Professor Klaus Schwab, a German economist and founder of the World Economic Forum, an annual gathering of high-level business and political leaders that since 1971 has usually met in Davos, Switzerland. According to the Great Reset's website, Project harbors a vision of the situation as having exposed inconsistencies, inadequacies, and contradictions in social systems, but also providing a unique window of opportunity to shape the world. Specifically, the Great Reset advertises itself as an initiative to build a new social contract that honors the dignity of every human being. Oh, now we're getting somewhere. To achieve that new social contract, the Great Reset architects argue that the world must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our societies and economies, from education to social contracts and working conditions. So, they're saying that they must act very, very fast. And they need to act swiftly and very, very fast so that not a lot of people can keep up with what's going on. And so they can hurry up and cement it, announce it to the people of the world, and get ahead on our reaction to it. Schwab himself sees the predominant Western-based economic system heavily laden with enormous debt estimated to be $277 trillion. That's the first time I've ever seen anybody put out the actual number of our national debt. They tell us it's like 30 trillion. But 277 trillion is actually very close. It's about 300 trillion. That's not fit anymore for the 21st century and in need of reform. Well, that was the point in the first place when they created the Federal Reserve, because they knew at a later date that they would be doing it. And they could say, oh, look at all this debt we racked up over all this time, and it's not fit anymore for the 21st century. That's why in the Federal Reserve Act, it was only to be established from December 23rd, 1913 to December 23rd, 2013. But guess what? That day came and went. Nobody said a word. It just slipped on by, and the Federal Reserve continued. They thought they would only need that 100 years. But they needed a little bit longer. The world, he believes, is entering what he calls the Fourth Industrial Revolution, a new era of paradigm change driven by technological breakthroughs such as artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and robotics. It needs to adapt accordingly. With the economic emergency responses to the situation now in place, the opportunity can be seized to make this kind of institutional changes and policy choices that will put economies in a new path toward a fairer, greener future. Schwab writes in his 2020 book, The Great Reset, co-authored by French economist Thierry Maleret. Every country from the United States to China must participate, and every industry from oil, gas to tech must be transformed. Register contacted the World Economic Forum several times for comment on the Great Reset initiative, but received no response. Well, of course, you're not going to respond. Not going to respond to anybody. They don't have to. They're in charge, right? Overlapped with Pope Francis' approach. The theme of the Great Reset is not exclusive to the World Economic Forum. Others have called for some form of communitarian reset of values and institutions, including Pope Francis, who sees the situation as exposing capitalism's flaws. And we all know that they've destroyed the name and the idea of capitalism. What we have today is not even close to what capitalism actually is, but they keep it under the same name so they can destroy capitalism, real capitalism, and replace it with, well, what they want to replace it with, which is one world socialist, totalitarian, communist government. That's what it is. What we have today would be considered a corporate oligarchy, 100%, or a fascist state. As we went over in one of my recent videos where we talked about the similarities between the different forms of government and the United States today. Having overseen his own hotly debated reset of the church over the past 8 years, the Pope has begun a number of initiatives along some of the same lines as Schwab. Well, of course, he has frequently expressed a wish for the world to take the opportunity to emerge better from the situation, including through his October 2020 social encyclical Fratelli Tutti, which WEF read as proposing a reset similar to its own. His Economy of Francesco initiative in Assisi, in November, that proposed a new economy of communal wealth. Oh, that sounds like communism. There it is right there. Communal wealth. Communist. Communal. I mean, it can't get any more plain than that. They're literally telling you exactly what they are doing. His UN-affiliated Global Compact for Education initiative, or the Vatican's collaboration with Mission 4.7, a UN-backed project like the Global Compact, aims to educate the world in sustainable lifestyles, gender equality, and a culture of peace and non-violence. Yeah, they will be the only ones able to use violence whenever they see fit. You are not allowed to defend yourself. For if you do, you are a terrorist extremist. But we are allowed to attack anybody we want because we are the New World Government. Also relevant to his vision for resetting the world's socioeconomic systems is Francis' new interview book with Papal biographer Austin. That's a weird name to spell that name with an E, never seen that. Ivory, called Let Us Dream, The Path to a Better Future, an excerpt of which was published in the New York Times. Francis' vision overlaps substantially with the Great Reset. For me, it's clear, Francis writes, quote, "We must redesign the economy so that it can offer every person access to a dignified existence while protecting and regenerating the natural world." Again, this is code for protecting and regenerating the natural world, as in you have to move off the land. We have to let it regrow. Even though all the land is already bought up and there's so much land that's untouched that we're not even allowed to be on, the earth itself is fine. It's literally fine, except for what these people have been doing to it. The earth will always be fine until God is completely done with it. I firmly believe that. I 100% believe that. Cardinal Peter Turkson, prefect of the dicastery, however you say that, for integral human development, sees other significant commonalities between the goals of initiative and those of Pope Francis. He also pointed to Francis' decision last year to create a commission to reflect on a new post-situation, socio-economic, cultural future and propose relevant approaches. The Vatican C19 Commission, with its slogan, Prepare the Future, is led and run by the Cardinals' dicastery. I think that's how you say that. But the reason that the Pope's initiatives and agenda lines up with Schwab's is because they all work toward the same goal. We know this. And now they're just admitting it. They all work toward the same goal. A new world order, a one world government. It doesn't get much more plain than what they're telling us here. Cardinal Turkson told the Register January 28th the Vatican wishes to be open to such initiatives as the Great Reset, adding that such openness and engagement has its origins in the Second Vatican Council's call to be a witness and show solidarity with humanity, he said. The objective for us, and from the point of view of Pope Francis, is to reimagine a social order with more justice, equity, where social injustices are overcome, he said. This is why, he explained, his dicastery has shared a lot of information with Davos, the UN, about our approach, making it very likely that language of the Vatican and World Economic Forum now begins to be closer. Oh, so we're morphing religion, well, their religion, with state again. Oh, that's right, because this new world Luciferian state will be also a theocracy. It's going to be all of it into one with the New Age religion. The Pope is also uniting all of the religions. He's been doing that. And in the process, they will destroy true Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and all the other belief systems of any people in the entire world. That's the point. Even atheism, gone. That's the point. Here we go. Wrong image of humanity? Cardinal Gerard Mueller, prefect emeritus of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, said he welcomes economists and politicians meeting to discuss the world economy, as the economy must benefit everyone and not a select few. Oh yeah, if they actually believe that. Whatever. But he wonders what image of humanity is held by World Economic Forum members and those of other similar select groups. As for initiatives such as the Great Reset, he takes decidedly jaundiced view. You notice the language they're using? Image of humanity, the image. We are created in the image of God. And they want to change that image so that the image will now be that man himself has become God and has conquered himself. That's literally where we are right now in this convergent period of time. Without directly referring to the initiative, he told the Register January 29th that two sides, profiteering capitalism, big tech giants of Western countries, and the communism of the People's Republic of China, are today converging and merging into a unified capital socialism, producing a new colonialism the Pope has often warned against. Oh yeah. The goal, Cardinal Mueller believes, is absolute control of thought, speech, and action. The homogenized man can be steered more easily, he added. The Orwellian world of Homo digitalis has begun. Through mainstreaming total conformity, the consciousness of the masses to be achieved via the media. He recalled the 19th century French polymath Gustave Le Bon, who predicted such a situation in his book, The Psychology of Crowds. Gee. They're pretty much just telling us right now, actually, what they're doing. Renato Kristin, professor of philosophical hermeneutics at the University of Trieste, Italy, noted that the problem of conscience has no mention in Schwab's book, and that by subtracting elements of capitalism, it introduces principles of another kind, socialist above all, and therefore statist. In its rejection of capitalism, the Great Reset, perhaps its greatest commonality with the vision of the Pope Francis, according to Christian, who describes the Pope as being generally sympathetic to initiatives that are hostile to the capitalist system. Well, yeah, I'd say. This hasn't gone unnoticed by the World Economic Forum. An article on its website praised the Pope for his clear refutation and fertility of neoliberalism. Today's market-oriented competitive economic system that aims to eliminate price controls, deregulate capital markets, lower trade barriers, and reduce state influence in the economy. The Great Reset similarly rejects it. In other areas, Christen believes Schwab's book lacks certainties and clear ideas on which to build the future, a symptom of what he calls disorientation and mark of chaos that afflicts the Western world today. It produces a nihilistic secularism he believes and paves the way for de-Christianized society, as well as negative forces like Islamism. Rather than follow such initiatives, when he describes as theological political visions linked to liberation theology, he believes the church should apply the social doctrine of the church in its original and authentic formulation given by Pope Leo the 13th in his encyclical Rerum Novarum, by Pope John Paul II in his encyclicals Laborum Externis and Centesimus Annus. The world, he said, needs a well-founded, solid, clear, and effective theories that refer to great values of the Western tradition and which really bring order to the world. They're literally telling us exactly what they're doing. They're not even hiding it anymore. And people still don't want to see it. And they're literally telling us, like articles like this. They're telling us exactly what they are doing. But perhaps the most significant danger of the Great Reset Initiative is its utopian atheistic vision, according to some critics. Schwab and Malloret, for instance, never once mentioned God or religion in their book or leave any room for the transcendent. Well, no, these people don't believe in God. They're not ready to say who they believe yet, but we know. History teaches that such omissions are not good omens. Cardinal Muller noted, whenever man wanted to recreate and redeem himself, he recalled a monster has been created instead, citing as an example the gruesome human experiment of the communist Soviet Union that coincided with the Industrial Revolution. That should have convinced us, he said, that the utopia of paradise on earth in any form results in the greatest crimes against humanity: denial of dissenters' freedom, destruction of labor, population reduction by abortion and euthanasia. Man's nature, wounded by sin, needs divine forgiveness. Only God's grace can redeem us and give us the freedom and glory of the children of God. Okay, I really want to keep reading this, but we pretty much read enough, but I wanted to get to something else. So, on the last note on this, you guys could see exactly what they're calling for and what is going on here. Okay, this is called Engineering a New World Technocracy in Transformation Part 1. It's Part 1 of a multi-part series, historically oriented. That said, whatever, I just want to get through this a little bit. Running short on time, sorry guys. Rugged individualism must go. The individual must subordinate himself to the community. Graham A. Lang. Those disturbing words didn't spring out of Nazi Germany beneath the fascist Italy or Stalin's heavy-handed Soviet Union, although the text was common to that era. Rather, the idea that individualism must go was the language of a very American movement, one that rapidly spread during the 30s. From Columbia University to newspapers coast to coast, technocracy was the buzzword for a new way of organizing humanity. Mention technocracy today and a mix of responses emerge. It's a lot science fiction books, explained one younger friend. It's a model for a utopian world run by technology. An older gentleman, product of the 1940s, laughed when I mentioned the word. It was a crackpot idea with a cult following. Thankfully, it died long ago. Another friend, who was a child during the Great Depression, remembers hearing about it at the kitchen table, seeing technocracy literature in the house. Technocracy was all of the above. Utopian dream, cult-like movement, and a concept that captured the public's attention. But it was, and is much more, prime motivator. Today, the fingerprints of technocracy are deeply impressed upon the political, economic, military, social, and spiritual landscape. There isn't anything that technocracy hasn't touched, chiefly because, as a type of meta-philosophy, it rests on the most basic principle of human rebellion. By pursuing God-like illumination, man can become as God. That's the first lie ever told. And I brought this up because it goes well with the article that I just read to you guys. That's the original lie that the serpent told Eve in the garden. Man can become as God. Excuse me. Man, not God, is the ultimate engineer of human destiny. Therefore, man is God. Technocracy represents the pinnacle of man's quest for self-deification, the perfectibility of man through thoughts of his mind and the subsequent works of his hands. It's the cosmic taunt stemming from the most ancient of days. What God can do, man can do. The Garden of Eden will be remade. At the personal level, the first techno fingerprint came to view in 2009. After seeing it, I couldn't believe I had somehow overlooked technocracy in my past research. Ironically, I had published many articles touching on the subject, including a well-circulated piece in 2004 titled Social Engineering for Global Change. Yet I hadn't realized that a specialized meta movement existed that gave energy to the changes being described. I had chalked it up to globalism and world citizenship, which wasn't inaccurate, but I had missed a bigger picture. Two quotes immediately come to mind from 2004 social engineering article. Quote, 50 years is ample time in which to change the world and its people, almost beyond recognition. All that's required for the task are sound knowledge of social engineering, clear sight of the intended goal and power. Arthur C. Clarke. Quote, a world society cannot be haphazard. Since there are no precedents, it cannot be traditional at this stage in its development. It can only be deliberative and experimental, planned and built up with particular objectives, with the aid of all available knowledge concerning the principles of social organization. Social engineering is a new science. Scott Nearing. A double irony exists, as these two quotes were the inspiration for the title of web-based research journal, Forcing Change. And these two quotes describe the heartbeat of technocracy, man's desire to reshape humanity in man's image. That's what this is all about. This is all about destroying the image of God and creating it in man's image. Absolutely. Which is how Lucifer intends to destroy humanity. Let's see. So what was the fingerprint that caught my attention in 2009? Carbon and a phone call. A report titled Cash for Clunkers, now published by the Science and Public Policy Institute. I had mentioned the potential for a coming global currency system based on carbon credits. Quoted from Harvard International Review. Quote, new currencies emerging in the world markets, unlike the dollar, euro, and yen, that trade for tangible goods and human services. This new money exchanges for pollution, particularly emissions of carbon dioxide. Carbon credits, as they are called, are poised to transform the world energy system and thus the world economy. Well, I would say that's pretty damn close to what we have now, right? I'm going to skim through this, guys, because I really have to get going. Whenever carbon is consumed, translates to whatever energy is used. The implications are staggering. Let's keep going down. Freemasonry of science. At its core, technocracy seeks the engineered society, not through conventionally understood ideologies such as capitalism or socialism, but through scientific engineering mindset. In this sense, technology plays a defining role in society, and social engineers wield the technical means to transform a population. From economics and industry to population size and general education, the desire of technocracy was to remake the world in a way that exemplified efficiency and guaranteed social harmony. But it would be a grave mistake and oversimplification to say that all scientists, technicians, and engineers are technocrats, specialists who adhere to technocracy, and not every follower of technocracy is a specialist, as numerous non-technical individuals have supported the concept. Nor would it be wise to say that technology is morally reprehensible. It can be used for good or evil. Now, technology can challenge our worldview. It can culturally redefine ideals, cherished positions. This knowledge prompted Professor Neil Postman to ask, to whom will technology give greater power and freedom? And whose power and freedom will be reduced by it? Good question. Good question. Let's see. Let me just go ahead and skip down through here a little bit. The term Freemasonry of science could hardly be accidental, and indeed is pregnant with meaning. Used H.G. Wells' movie Things to Come propaganda piece that heralded technocratic utopia arising from the ashes of a world crisis. This phrase proclaimed that brotherhood would oversee the transformation of society. Well, it's kind of like what we're going through right now, ain't it? You can see how it all lines up. It all lines up. Okay, in the movie, advanced technology wielded by this brotherhood of efficiency overcame those who opposed progress. Not unlike the Masonic Lodge with its brotherhood of man, Wells' brotherhood would be bound by the common goal of bettering humanity. But the Freemasonry of science comment is important in that it takes the ideal of human advancement to a deeper level. It expounds the science of mysticism, the perfectibility and ascendancy of man. This is evident in the symbols of the lodge, such as the perfect ashlar, expressed in the writings of Freemasonry's most eminent philosophers, including Albert Pike, Manly P. Hall, Henry C. Clausen, who reminded his fellow travelers, quote, "Science and religion will be welded into a unified exponent of overriding spiritual power. The theme and essence is that revelations of Eastern mysticism and discoveries of modern science support the Masonic and Scottish Rite beliefs and teachings. Science and philosophy, especially when linked through mysticism, have yet to conquer ignorance and superstition. Victory, however, appears on the horizon. Laboratory and library science and philosophy, outstanding technicians and theologians are now uniting as advocates of man's unique quality, his immortal soul, and ever-expanding soul." Okay. Now, down here, talks about H.G. Wells and what he understood. And down at the bottom, he envisioned a world and civilization that will replace socialism and communism. It will be a world religion. Which is actually where we're going to go ahead and stop, because I read a lot more than I wanted to, because I wanted to really read through this. But it's okay, because I'm going to start here next time. And I apologize for that, guys. I really do apologize for that. But I just wanted to get you guys an idea of what we're going to be reading. And I'm sorry that I took up too much time, but we'll go ahead and finish it next time. We'll just end here. Let's pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not unto temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.